Hello, BookTube. I mentioned just recently that I am waiting on a book. There's one particular book that I'm kind of psychically wondering where it is and when it's going to get here. And that has caused me to develop a bad habit in the last couple of days, which is to open all sorts of packages right away without turning on a camera. And the result is that we have a large number of books that were opened off camera. The book still hasn't shown up. The one I want has still not shown up. But I have a lot of things that I want to show you. A lot of new releases. Dates all over the place. Some of them I'm sure don't have slips in them. Of stuff that's either out now or coming out in February or coming out down the line. Might interest you more than it interests me. So let's go through these and see what we have. Starting with this one. This is by Matt Cracked. I don't know what to say. I know what to say, but it's a little depressing. This is OMFG Bees. Bees are so amazing, and you're about to find out why. This is a pretty little thing, yellow cover there. It's got deep French flaps and bee end papers. And it is illustrated all throughout with all the different bees that are considered here, plus facts about them. And my objection right away is, what does that abbreviation stand for? It's just the dumbing down of the 21st century. What does that abbreviation stand for? Am I supposed to use that abbreviation in a review without saying what it stands for? And can I say what it stands for? No, not unless I want to cuss like a third grader. Just a note to authors: avoid lazy idioms. They make you look dumb anyway, even if they're not foul-mouthed. But they're still the book. But part of the reason for the kind of irreverent title here is that this author did a book that did really well. What was the name of it? That was also irreverent. Yes, The Field Guide to the Dumb Birds of the Whole Stupid World. It did really well. So that's the reason for the levity here. But this is just this is a book about bees. Very, very basic book about bees. And here's the thing. Bees are in trouble. Their population in decline, with scientists working to develop a vaccine to help them recover. Why should we care? As the author says so eloquently, if bees were to go extinct, we'd be in big, big trouble. So he wrote a book to get you as pumped about bees as he is. Bee fact, bee identification, insights into bee behavior, as well as ways to help bees thrive so humans can continue to enjoy, well, food. Which is, that's adorable, and I will read this, of course. Did I mention when this comes out? It comes out in March, and it's kind of a quasi-keepsake thing. Any of you who encountered this person's bird book and really liked the tone and the nature of it, now you know there's a bee book coming out. I'll have as I mentioned in a video earlier today, I'll have a wistful smile on my face the whole time that I'm reading it. Because me sainted ma had a very vexed relationship with bees. So whenever a new bee book came out, I would always get a copy and give it to her just to razz her. And we had a great deal of fun about that. I would certainly have given her a copy of this. Then this next one. This is unexpected and a treat. An absolute treat. This is, let's get all the information that we need here. This is from MIT Press. And this is Theodore Savage by Cicely Hamilton, with a great cover designed by someone named Seth, but I assume not the 1970s Seth, who was so-called psychic. This is a classic novel. This was originally published almost a century ago, 1922, so a century ago. That MIT Press decided to bring back, and not only bring back, but bring back in this lovely edition. Just fantastic. And its author, Cicely Hamilton, was the real deal. She wrote this book, but she spent most of her life working for freedom and equality for women under law. She worked tirelessly for the women's franchise. Tirelessly for equal pay, equal treatment in the workplace, equal social benefits. Her whole the dividing passion of her entire life was that women are human, just like men, and that these codified laws that exist absolutely everywhere in every aspect of life ought to be just scrapped. This is ridiculous. Why are we still thinking this way? collected works of Cicely Hamilton. If it exists out there, I've never seen it, but it would be really nice. But amazing that MIT decided to reprint this. This is a post-apocalyptic novel with a lot of sarcastic bite. This comes out in early February. This comes out in just a week. When war breaks out in Europe, British civilization collapses overnight. The ironically named protagonist must learn to survive by his wits in a new Britain. When we first meet Savage, he is a complacent civil servant, primarily concerned with romancing his girlfriend. During the brief war, in which both sides use population displacement as a terrible strategic weapon, Savage must battle his fellow countrymen. He shacks up with an ignorant young woman in a forest hut, a kind of inverse Garden of Eden where no one is happy. Eventually, he sets off in search of other survivors, only to discover a primitive society where science and technology have come to be regarded with superstition and awe. I am delighted to see this thing reprinted. I'm curious to know if MIT Press has done other things like this and I just haven't noticed. But what a thing. What a thing to have this back in print. And in such a gorgeous edition, it's never looked any better. It's, in some ways, the most frivolous thing that Cicely Hamilton ever wrote. It wouldn't hurt to reprint all of her serious work. That wouldn't hurt at all, especially since it's just recently that the United States Supreme Court struck down Roe v. Wade, and most of the paleoconservative fascist Republicans who are in lawmaking in the United States Congress, either in House of Representatives or in the Senate, very much don't want women to have the right to vote. That is not ironic. That is not MSNBC hyperbole. They, in closed-door conferences, and sometimes at Freedom USA or Freedom Point or Fascist Point or whatever talking events they go to, where everyone is frisked ahead of time to make sure they don't have any ability to record, but recordings come out anyway, they say the 19th Amendment was probably a mistake. It's not biblical, which is everything. Given that we live in a world like that, where state legislatures in the United States, state legislators are putting forward laws that say, well, okay, the instant Roe v. Wade was struck down, we made abortion illegal in this state, no matter what. Get raped by your brother, you have to bring the baby to term. The pregnancy is certainly going to kill you. We're willing to lose you as long as you don't lose the baby. We're willing to lose both of you rather than abort the baby. In states like that, state legislators have already come forward and said, well, the thing that women are going to do is just get in a car and travel to the nearest state that allows them to have an abortion. So maybe we shouldn't allow them to travel. So, in light of that, we could certainly use Cicely Hamilton a lot more than Theodore Savage, but I'll take Theodore Savage. Then we have a book from Princeton University Press, the great folks at Princeton University Press. This is Caleb Smith's book, Thoreau's Acts, Distraction and Discipline in American Culture. Another book about distraction. This comes out January 31st, so Tuesday. Today, we're driven to distraction, our attention overwhelmed by the many demands upon it, most of which emanate from our beeping and blinking digital devices. You should disable the notifications on all of your electronics. All of them. Do it now. Not right now. Keep your eyes transfixed on the screen, thank you very much. But your machine should not be talking to you. It should not be asking for your attention. Get over yourself if you think that you need to have your notifications on in case an important message comes through. Please. That hasn't happened. It isn't going to happen. You should go into the settings of your iPad, your phone, your computer, and turn off all notifications. Don't mute them. Don't turn them for a certain time. Your machine should never speak to you. It develops a Pavlovian response when it does. But anyway, this may seem like a decidedly 21st century problem, but as Caleb Smith shows in this elegantly written meditative work, distraction was also a serious concern in American culture 2 centuries ago. He explores the strange, beautiful archives of the 19th century attention revival, from a Protestant minister's warning against frivolous thoughts to Thoreau's reflections on wakefulness while he was at Walden Pond. The author examines how Americans came to embrace attention, mindfulness, and other ways of being spiritual but not religious, and how older Christian ideas about temptation and spiritual devotion endure in our modern ideas about distraction and attention. So very much the very much the companion to that book we saw earlier on how medieval monks and clerics dealt with distraction. Then we have this somber thing from the Brookings Institute. Can't wait to see how serious this is. This is by Michael O'Hanlon, and it is Military History for the Modern Strategist, America's Major Wars since 1861. And it's just a somber black thing here. Tons and tons of military people on the back giving it blurbs. And when the author says major, he really means major. The American Civil War, World War I, World War II, Korea and Vietnam in one chapter, and then America's wars in the Middle East since the 1990s, the Bush Wars. And none of the rest of it. Nothing else is included in here. I often find that approach a little bit reductive, especially since I'm sure the author is writing this book in the context of the war in Afghanistan and the drawdown of the war in Afghanistan. And the war in Afghanistan does not closely resemble World War I or World War II. There are obvious parallels with Korea and with Vietnam, but what about the Philippine War? It's a lot more illustrative, I think, but I'm sure it'll be mentioned in here. This is military history, just straight up with no chaser. I often have a sweet tooth for that sort of thing, so I'll definitely read it and give it a report back. Then we have the latest in an installment. This has gone on for dozens of books now. This is Donna Leon's new book, So Shall You Reap. These are murder mysteries set in Venice. This one, the description is that in Commissario Brunetti is the main character here. He's an ordinary cop, fairly observant, but nothing supernatural, nothing like that, and not much in the way of personality either. He's a dedicated family man. And here, a friend of his asks him to informally look into threatening behavior, and it at first seems strange because the person has clients, but the clients all seem completely innocuous. But then the threatening behavior gets a little more explicit. I didn't get the hint anywhere in the description of this book about murder. And I wonder if Donna Leon has so much clout in the industry now. I mean, she's been doing these Venice murder mysteries forever. Maybe she does occasionally write a novel without a murder in it. A mystery novel without a murder in it. Usually, mystery authors are told by their publishers, don't try that sort of stuff. Don't try it. We need at least one dead body. But we shall see. I'm a big fan of the series. It could probably do no wrong for me. Then we have, this is very interesting. There's a little bit of a thread here. This is Melvin Leffler, and this is his book, Confronting Saddam Hussein, George W. Bush and the Invasion of Iraq. And I don't know what to make of this on the surface. I really don't. Look at the cover, for instance. There's Saddam Hussein, and there's George W. Bush, and what's in the middle? The rubble of 9/11. Sometimes, well, let's see what we have. This is the finished copy, so this is exactly what you will do in a bookstore. You will open it and read the dust jacket. In this book, eminent historian and U.S. foreign policy of U.S. foreign policy, Melvin Leffler, analyzes why the U.S. chose war and who was most responsible for the decision. Employing a unique set of personal interviews with dozens of top officials and declassified American and British documents, the author vividly portrays the raw emotions and harrowing anxieties that shaped the thinking of the president after the shocking events of 9/11. Plans to invade Iraq were in existence and going forward long before 9/11. Invading Iraq was a plan of the Bush administration on Inauguration Day. Harrowing anxieties makes it sound like they were lashing out like children. They didn't lash out at the country that did 9/11, that's for sure. Anyway, he shows how fear, hubris, and power influenced Bush's approach to Saddam Hussein's Iraq. Critical to Leffler's account is his compelling portrait of Saddam Hussein himself, rather than stressing Bush's preoccupation with promoting freedom and democracy. Well, I gotta try it anyway. This is all still raw, recent events for me. 9/11 and the immediate aftermath, I was watching appalled, while literally world-shaping history was happening on the news every day. Many of you would have been too young, but some of you will know what I mean. You knew right away, this is the times. This is the raw muscle back of history flexing with you on it as just a flea. promoting freedom and democracy does not give me hope that Loeffler is actually going to dig into this subject. But I could be wrong. Loeffler emphasizes Hussein's brutality, opportunism, and unpredictability, and illuminates how the Iraqi dictator's record of aggression and intransigence haunted the president and influenced his calculations. Bush was not eager for war, but he was convinced that Hussein would not budge lest confronted with the threat of force. Okay, that should be an unless. Would not budge unless confronted with the threat of force. Embracing a strategy of coercive diplomacy. His credibility on the line, Bush pitted his resolve against Hussein's defiance. All right. So I'm going to check right away. I shouldn't, because this won't have an index and it won't have a bibliography. It's a modern work of history, so it will be stripped bare of all the stuff that it absolutely has to have. Oh, this does have an index. Oh, and it does have a bibliography and notes. Oh my. Okay, Melvin Loeffler, Emeritus Professor of American History at the University of Virginia. Good for him. Good for him. So this has the full scholarly apparatus. I've lost track of how many works of history in 2023 I've read that just openly don't have anything. Just don't have anything like that at all. Just I'm a work of history. Just take my word for it. Or maybe catch me on the street and I'll tell you some of the books that I consulted. This has it all. Confronting Saddam Hussein. Oh my. Well, I knew when these events were unfolding that history books would start to trickle, and that eventually, if I lived long enough, I would see major works of history. And I have. Quite a few of them. We'll see. We'll see how this one is. I don't have a sheet on it, so I don't know when it comes out. Couldn't be any more interesting to me. Then we have, this comes out in late April. This is edited by Andre Dubus, and this is Reaching Inside, 50 acclaimed authors on 100 unforgettable short stories. Used to be. There's the bean. And this is a gigantic collection of names. There you have names there. A gigantic collection of names writing about short stories and shorter works that they found formative and really fascinating. So you've got we'll just pick at random here. Lauren Groff writes about The Overcoat by Nikolai Gogol and The Shawl by Cynthia Ozick. Jane Hamilton writes about Goodbye, My Brother, a short story by John Cheever, and White Angel by Michael Cunningham, and so on and so forth. Ron Hansen writes about To Build a Fire by Jack London and Master and Man by Leo Tolstoy. Paul Harding writes about 2 Cheever stories. So who knows? With books like this are always an uneven affair. Certainly somewhere in here, I will encounter people who are writing fantastically well, as opposed to just, sort of grinding out hot air. And the ones that are writing, surprisingly, really, really engaged with their subject matter, often the winning essays in volumes like this are not about books that I myself like. And those essays make me want to go back to the books and examine them again. Come May, I will almost certainly have that reaction to this book. Okay, then we have another. This is another. The thread continues here because this is another book about Bush era policy. This is another George W. Bush book. This is The Handoff, big fat book, edited by Stephen Hadley, Peter Feaver, William Imboden, and Megan O'Sullivan, with prefaces by Condoleezza Rice and George W. Bush. No real author listed here, but this is The Handoff, the foreign policy George W. Bush passed to Barack Obama. Big fat thing that comes out in, this is from the Brookings Press as well. This comes out in mid-February, so probably on my agenda this weekend. And it's about the handoff of foreign policy problems from George W. Bush to Obama. So George W. Bush started 2 open-ended wars, massively destructive open-ended wars, that were, at least on paper, at least in the well of the Senate, proposed against an idea rather than a foe. We're making a war on terrorism. Well, the world's never going to be free of terrorism. So you're literally announcing that the United States is always going to be at war. Sooner or later, Bush had to leave office, and he had to hand all that mess to Obama. So what have we got here? This book details the Bush administration's national security and foreign policy as described at the time of the then classified transition memoranda prepared by the National Security Council experts who advised President Bush. 30 of these transition memoranda, newly declassified and here made public for the first time, provide a detailed, comprehensive, and first-hand look at the foreign policy of the Bush administration turned over to President Obama. These same experts now, in hindsight, take a remarkably self-critical look at the Bush foreign policy legacy after more than a dozen years of watching subsequent administrations attempt to deal with the same vexing agenda of threats and opportunities. But George W. Bush wrote one of the prefaces to this. So how hard-hitting is it going to be? It doesn't even sound like there's a narrative here. It sounds like this is just annotated, released documents. Which is open. If there's not a narrative, if there isn't a historian involved, then that opens every opportunity for self-justification by a president who is widely regarded in most of the world as a war criminal. I don't know what to make of it. I've never encountered a book quite like it before, so I will dig in. I'll right alongside with that Saddam Hussein book. I will read them together. Serious, at least to some extent, attempts to assess the Bush presidency. These books are coming. They're going to keep coming, so I'm going to pay attention to them. Then we have a hardcover. This is a hardcover of Culture. The Story of Us, From Cave Art to K-Pop by Martin Puchner. There's sort of a Day-Glow Nefertiti. And this is just a huge, sweeping cultural history of a type that I have to confess I almost never see them done well. Almost always they are short shrifting pretty much everything. But this got positive reviews from all of the industry journals, so it may be good. What good are the arts? Why should we care about the past? For millennia, humanity has sought to understand and transmit to future generations not just the know-how of life, but the know-why of life. The meaning and purpose of our existence as expressed in art, architecture, religion, and philosophy. And that's what this thing is all about. This comes out on February 7th, so this is also right around the corner. Just a big sweeping cultural history that it really won't be a cultural history, because look how small it is. It really won't be a cultural history. Instead, it will be the author plunking down on a dozen cultural icons of one kind or another and spinning a narrative around them. Good, that still could be very, very good. We'll see. This next one bears signs of frustration because it came with a huge sticker on the cover that totally obscures the author's name and almost obscures the title. The author is Richard Goodrich, and the book is Comet Madness: How the 1910 Return of Halley's Comet Almost Destroyed Civilization. I'm going to use all the techniques at my disposal to get that sticker off the cover because I think I want to keep this book. It sounds fascinating. It comes out in February, but I don't have an exact date. It'll come out in hardcover, this thing, in February. Halley's Comet visits the Earth every 75 years. Since the dawn of civilization, humans believed comets were evil portents. In 1705, Edmund Halley liberated humanity from these primordial superstitions, proving that Newtonian mechanics, rather than the will of the gods, brought comets into our celestial neighborhood. Despite this scientific advance, when Halley's Comet returned in 1910, the astronomers announced that our planet would pass through its poisonous tail. Newspapers gleefully provoked a global hysteria that unfolded with tragic consequences. Probably people died. I think I remember reading a story like that in History Magazine or something like that. In this book, the author examines the 1912 appearance of Halley's Comet and the ensuing frenzy sparked by media manipulation, bogus science, and outright deception. The result is a fascinating and illuminating narrative history that underscores how we behave in the face of potential calamity then and now. And also to come, because 2061 or 2062, Halley's Comet will return. It'll be easily visible in the daytime sky. Come really close to Earth. One random collision with even a small object in Earth's near neighborhood, in the asteroid belt or wherever, and it could hit the Earth. Halley's Comet hits the Earth, then that's an extinction level event. Then nothing would survive even at the bottom of the ocean. Because it's immense. But I'm hoping that this thing has a lot about Edmund Halley. That would be great. He's a fascinating figure who hasn't had a big, full-scale biography in too many years. But this is mainly going to focus on 1910. Fine by me. Then we have a big work of history. I have a sheet for this. Yeah, this is from the folks at Echo Press. This is by Nina Siegel, and this is The Diary Keepers, World War II in the Netherlands, as written by the people who lived through it. Fascinating. Fascinating stuff. This comes out at the end of February. A lot of these are February releases. That's good. When journalist Nina Siegel's piece, The Lost Diaries of the War, ran in the New York Times in 2020, the response was immediate and overwhelming. With her small selection of diary entries from the collections of over 2,100 she had encountered in the NIOD Institute for War, Holocaust, and Genocide Studies in Amsterdam the year before, she had struck a chord. Readers were hungry for these stories of everyday people who had lived through World War II as she had been, so Siegel returned to the archive and put together a stunning, expansive history. So this was an article in the New York Times that went so viral that the author got the green light to make a book. Great. Fantastic. And also, histories largely based on quoting from diaries are endlessly fascinating. So you're going to get any more immediate than that. And then we have this big, oversized thing. Could swear we've seen this on this channel before, but maybe not. This comes out... Are you not going to tell me? You're not going to tell me. Okay. No date at all. This is The Madman's Gallery by Edward Brooke Hitching. Look at that cover. We're losing our light a little here, but we're almost done, so that's just as well. Enter the Madman's Gallery and discover an extraordinary illustrated exhibition of the greatest curiosities from the global history of art, featuring 100 magnificently eccentric antique paintings, engravings, illustrations, and sculptures, each with a fascinatingly bizarre history to tell. And I opened this pretty much at random earlier today, or maybe it was yesterday, and by sheer chance, I opened it to the chapter on the Gardner art heist in 1991. Thieves posing as policemen waited outside the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum until it closed, bluffed their way in, overpowered the museum guards that were there overnight, and had the free run of the Gardner Museum for the whole of that night. They stole a whole bunch of stuff, including a Rembrandt portrait that is brilliant and that no one will ever see again. You can see reproductions of it. There's a reproduction of it in this book. But I wonder what kind of treatment that will have. There's just an article on the Gardner heist. Oh, look at it. Here we go. That is the Rembrandt painting, Storm on the Sea of Galilee. See that? With got darkness on one side and light on the other side of the painting with a line right down the middle, and right in the middle on the line is Rembrandt, who put himself in the painting. That was on right up at the top of the winding staircase of the Gardner. It's kind of the showpiece of the whole museum, and it's gone. It was cut right out of its frame. And that chapter will be on the Gardner heist. And then before we run out of light completely, we'll do a kid's book. This is by Grace Lynn and Kate Messner, and it is Once Upon a Book, with a child stepping into a book. So we have a sheet? Oh, I do. Great. Nice, big, pretty thing. Let's look at a picture. Let's look at the illustrations. Look at that. She's walking right into the book. How many bookworms do that? There she is. Look at that. This comes out in early February. This will be in your bookstores in early February. Let's see here. When creating her poster for the 100th anniversary of Children's Book Week, Grace Lynn drew inspiration from her daughter, whom she depicted blending into the world of the book she's engrossed in. Great. Fantastic. So I will look over this right now. I won't need to wait at all. But a lot of these things are on my list. I have a lot of February reading to do this weekend, this long weekend, and then all of next week. Really accelerating my February reading. But those are some new releases. Thought some of them might be of interest to you. There's a bit of a variety here, but still not the book I'm looking for. I imagine I will squeal like a pig if I get it and I open it on camera. We'll just have to wait and see. Sorry this video went long. I get to be talking about new books, and that happens. But I will wrap it up now, and I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.